I'm going to give you a brief history of Christianity in Japan. Christianity was first brought to Japan by the Portuguese missionary Francis Xavier in the summer of 1549 to the city of Kagoshima in Kyushu Island. Ironically, this was actually the first place where I began my missionary service about 12 years ago. And you can see that's the city I lived in for a while. You can see in the background there is a volcano, and I was assured that it was a dormant volcano, but nonetheless, it would smoke up, I would say, a couple times a year, so luckily nothing happened. And below that is the first, I guess, Catholic church that was established in Japan. No longer is there, just the facade. And that building was actually just a walk away from where I lived and where I worked. I'm going to go ahead and show the trailer.
Our Lord said to them, "Go ye into the whole world and preach the gospel to every living creature."
Ferreira is lost to us. They denounced God in public and surrendered the faith.
It's not possible. Father Ferreira risked his life to spread our faith all over Japan.
It seems to me that our mission here is more urgent than ever. We must go and find Father Ferreira.
This is in your hands, both of you.
Yes.
And I trust God has put it there. The government can set foot in our country instead of a high age.
The price for your glory is their suffering.
It's too dangerous. We ask for this mission. Praying to get lost. And I just praying to silence.
Gets me every time. To continue the history of Christianity, by the time these missionaries, which again, they are based on historical figures, by the time they landed in Japan, it was 1633. And there were about 300,000 Christians living in Japan. That was when the country was about 20 million, so a large Christian population, fairly large Christian population in Japan that was flourishing. Christianity was widely accepted. The foreign lords initially embraced the missionaries, partly out of the desire for trade with the foreigners, the Portuguese, whatnot. And they were also fascinated with foreign culture. And these rulers converted to Christianity. Many brought their subjects with them. And so, again, Christianity flourished, and there was a population of roughly 300,000 Christians. And soon these warring lords began to realize that Christ and the foreign Christian missionaries were becoming more powerful than they. And they began to expel the missionaries and persecute both the foreign leadership and also the local believers. That's kind of the setting for this trailer. And in the trailer, you see two Portuguese missionaries, so Father Sebastian Rodriguez, who was played by Andrew Garfield here, and Father Francisco Garube. They embark on this journey to Japan during the height of this Christian persecution. Now, their goal is twofold. One, they've heard that their mentor, their teacher, Father Ferreira, has denounced his faith as apostasy. And as their spiritual leader, as their teacher who's taught them everything, they don't believe it. They don't believe that he's denounced his faith. They believe that he's still working as a missionary, and their goal is to find a missing mentor. And if in case Father Ferreira has actually apostatized, then they want to make up for his apostasy, and they want to minister to the Japanese Christians. Although the story is about these two missionaries, it really focuses on the kind of the struggles and the faith of the character played by Andrew Garcia, Father. Yeah, okay, perfect. And he is the main character of this story. So, roughly the first third part of the movie or so focuses on the missionaries' journey to Japan and their missionary service. They minister to the Christians there, the Christians who are practicing in secret, hoping that they will not be caught by the authorities. They find a poor but welcoming Japanese Christian community who is desperate for leadership, desperate to give confessions, to do baptisms, and to learn from these fathers. So I'm going to go ahead and show you this next clip.
Their lives here are so hard. They live like beasts and die like beasts. But Christ did not die for the good and beautiful. That is easy enough. The hard thing is to die for the miserable and corrupt. But here I knew I was one of them, and I shared the hunger of their spirit.
So here he's ministering to, the Japanese Christians, and he's saying they're so, they've been persecuted. They were, essentially slaves living under the rulership of these warring lords. They were taxed heavily, and they did not have much for themselves. But he's talking about, how he's ministering to, I guess, the most marginalized, the least of us, so to speak. And as he's ministering, he begins to question why they have to struggle so much. He begins to question, he's asking God all these questions and he's not hearing anything. And he wonders, why do they have to struggle so much? Why are they persecuted so much? Lord, kind of respond to me. Tell me what to do. Tell me what to, to say, to think. And throughout the movie, he's still questioning God at this point, but he's still his faith is still unshaken, and he seems content at this point, even though as he talks to God, he hears nothing in return. I don't know if any of you, I'm sure all of you have experienced that at some point. You're desperately seeking God, and you do not hear him. Like, why is that? Why is that? And throughout this film, eventually, he and Father Garube, they split ways. He goes to one village, and Father Garube goes to another village where they continue their ministries individually. Now, popping up in this, I could do a whole series or a whole talk just about him, is a Christian, I'll leave that up to you, named Kichijiro. He provides the kind of comic humor in this whole film, but he essentially was a Christian and he apostatized. And then he went back and he wanted to confess his sins. And then he apostatized when things got difficult. So then he, went and wanted to confess again. So it's this constant, back and forth, denouncing God and then asking for forgiveness, denouncing God, asking for forgiveness. And this theme kind of continues throughout the movie. And the way that the Christians were forced to denounce God back in this time was, this is a picture of Christ, and it's called a fumi-e. So in Japanese, literally like step photo or step picture, where to show that they had denounced God, the Christians would be forced to step on a photo or a picture of Christ publicly to renounce their faith. And so in this movie, you'll see Kichijiro several times pretty quickly stepping on this photo, running away, and then coming back. Eventually, Kichijiro betrays Rodriguez, and Rodriguez is sent to Nagasaki. And once he's captured, he still continues to believe that he is going to die a martyr's death. So in the clip I showed before, when he was talking about dying for the least of these, the miserable people, he was thinking about how he eventually believed that he was going to one day die for the sake of the cause, to follow in Christ's footsteps and be martyred. And that's what he was expecting. And this scene kind of confirms his belief and how that starts only to change.
They are full of peasants.
Lord, spare them suffering and keep them safe in your hand.
They can talk among themselves without end and decide nothing. But you understand, don't you?
Just say what you mean.
That it all depends on you whether they are set free. If you say just one single word, shudder, deny your faith.
So what if I refuse? You kill me. The blood of martyrs is the seed of the church. Just like the priests you slaughtered in Omura and Nagasaki.
We learn from our mistake. Killing the priests and killing the peasants makes it worse. If they can die for their God, they think it only makes them stronger.
If you feel you must punish someone, punish me alone.
Oh my one man, you do not speak like a good priest. If you are a real man, a truly good priest, you should feel pity for the Christian. And that's all, Padre. Even that's all. The price for your glory is their suffering.
Price for your glory is their suffering. I think that this, out of, the entire movie was probably one of the two scenes or two concepts that I had the most difficult time grappling with. Mostly because we often think of our Christian experience, we think of our own faith, we think of maybe saving ourselves, we think of giving it all to Christ and sacrificing something, perhaps even our own lives. We don't think of the consequences, that they have on others, and as Pierce put, the cruelty of humans really to kind of push this button, so to speak. I also want to point out in this clip that, up until this point, Rodrigo had believed that he was going to die the martyr's death. Now he understands that, no, that's not like the case. They found that in killing in martyring the fathers, that the Christian population just gets stronger and stronger. So they figured out that by having these leaders essentially give up their faith, that they can essentially quench Christianity. I wanted to point out one other thing here. Sometimes when we are prepared to give up something for God, we are prepared to do as He tells. We pray, we ask, we expect, and then we realize that the sacrifice that we're willing to give God is not the one He asks us for. Like, why is that, and how do you deal with that? These trials aren't the same clear-cut black and white ones that you're expecting. In the case of Rodriguez, he's told to remain faithful, and the people he's ministering to will suffer, or he can just renounce, and everyone will be essentially let alone. And that's kind of this movie. Unfortunately, it's deeper and deeper into that, and a little bit darker and darker as the government continues to pressure him. He sees they do all sorts of things, sorts of tactics. They show him other suffering Christians. He has to witness the death of, the missionary he came with, Father Garube, who actually was trying to save the Christians, and he did die a martyr's death. The Japanese government had him meet with Ferreira, who, we mentioned the mentor, the teacher. When he met him, he finally realized that his teacher had apostatized. And he had not only given up his faith, but he was actively trying to help the Japanese leadership destroy Christianity. They would use all sorts of intellectual tactics to try to reason with him. They argued that Christianity could not take root in Japan because Japan was a swamp, and that they had no need for a Western God. And they would say, denounce God, save others. It's only a formality. They told him, just do it once. Step on the photo, step on the picture. You can still believe in your heart, but just go through that. And this next scene, I really wanted to show it, but it's not family church appropriate, so I'm just going to, talk about it very briefly. Eventually, Rodriguez finds himself in a situation where he's forced to make a decision. He can, he's captured. There are suffering Christians all around him, and they're trying to convince him to step on the picture. Even his teacher is telling them, just step on the photo, save yourself, save others. And I believe in a moment of weakness, although he hears the voice of Christ finally breaking that silence. Only the prisoners are let free, but his spirit is crushed. I know in my life I can relate to when I can see that my life is going one way, and things are just getting worse and worse and worse, and finally it comes to that low point in your life where you're broken, you're crushed, and you make a decision that you regret possibly for the rest of your life. I actually wish that the movie had ended here with him just stepping on the picture and, for me to kind of grapple with that. But unfortunately, what follows is a very confusing kind of illustration of the rest of his remaining years. He's essentially no longer a priest, no longer a father, and he's forced to work with the Japanese leadership to identify Christian items, to essentially help with the persecution. And, it kind of shows him essentially living his life without Christ. There are moments when he longs for Christ. It might come up in conversation, but the next moment he's writing a statement of denouncement of his faith, which the government asks for him routinely. He continues to maintain ties with some of the old Christians that he spent time with, and struggles because, again, Kichijiro, the character we talked about, comes and visits him, and he says, Father, I want to confess my sins. And he kind of grudgingly does this, if only for, I don't want to say old time's sake, but, a life of his past that is no longer. And then it goes back and forth to how he's kind of conformed, he's given up. And on the other hand, he longs for Christ. Giving up, longing for Christ, stepping on the photo, stepping on the pictures. And it kind of goes back and forth until this final clip here, which is essentially the ending of the movie.
The man who was once Rodriguez ended as they wanted, and as I first saw him, lost to God. But as to that, indeed, only God can answer.
This essentially is how the movie ends. This is not in the book, but it's in the movie where his wife, right before his burial, has snuck in a crucifix in his hands. And although he goes through the formalities of a non-Christian funeral, she puts this object in his hand, and you wonder why. Like, did she know that his Christian faith was still important to him? Or perhaps maybe he had ministered to her secretly. We can speculate all we want, we don't know. And as the narrator is talking in the scene, only God knows your heart. Like, we can speculate all we want about the scene and kind of about the actions of others, really. But ultimately, it's only really useful if we learn from it, and we can help use that to guide us in our Christian walk. Because at the end of the day, it's really all about your one-on-one relationship with Christ. I want to bring you back to the scene where he steps on the photo of Christ. Now, how many, just a show of hands, how many of you saw the movie? Okay, great. So, question. So in this scene where you watched as Rodriguez stepped on the image of Christ, right after that, did you notice, did you hear anything, did you notice anything that brought you back to a story in the Bible? Did you hear a little bit tricky. Did you hear an animal? Okay. Anyone else? Okay, a couple of people. Kirsten, heard it. No, okay. Okay. Kelsey, what was it? It was a rooster. Right after he denied Christ, there was a rooster in the background crying 3 times. Which brings me back to Peter in the Bible, where Peter made a lot of mistakes, and ultimately he essentially did what Rodriguez did here, is he denounced God publicly, 3 times even. And, we see that kind of as his stumbling moment. And when we oftentimes make mistakes, when we stumble, when we fall, we see that as our defining moment. We think, this is who I am. We think when things get tough, I'm going to stumble, I'm going to fall, I'm going to fail Christ. Or whatever it else is in your life that you may be struggling with. But I know that Christ looks beyond our mistakes. And like many things in life, it's what we do after the fall, after the mistakes we make that count. For Peter, after he denied Christ, his actions and his words proved that he really did love God. And he became one of the leaders of the Christian movement. He eventually, took up the cross of Christ and died for Christ. For Rodriguez, on the other hand, I really wanted the movie to help me affirm that Rodriguez was in the right, that he really loved God, that he was trying to save others. But no matter how much I grapple with this story, I'm inconclusive, because on the one hand, he was trying to do what he thought was right, trying to follow God, and on the other hand, was trying, kind of placate. And I believe he meant well, but I also think that, the aftermath of what happened was he was trying to serve 2 masters, essentially. Because, again, after he apostatized, he went back and forth with his decisions, and he would secretly say or do something that was Christian and then outwardly denounce, secretly and denounce. And I really tried to understand the text. No one can serve 2 masters, because either he will hate one and love the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other. But I would go further to suggest you can't serve 2 masters, because internally it's painful. It's painful. You might love him one day or one moment, and then go back and forth and back and forth, and this constant struggle, this suffering is what we end up with. But this is exactly why Christ came to this earth, to help us with our sufferings, to help us, to guide us in moments when we don't understand, even if we're doubting him because we're doubting our faith, doubting our actions, because we know that he has taken the cross and he died that ultimate death. So no matter what you do, even Easter, no matter, what Rodriguez did, no matter if he, apostatized, God still loves him. And there is nothing that you can do that will change that love of God. You can do nothing, there's nothing in the world that you can do to make God love you any more or any less. And I kind of want to, use that as a reminder for those of you who might be struggling. Our struggles, again, aren't always the ones we anticipate, and our struggles may go on for years. Like, we often think of a trial, being something that happens really quickly and is resolved. But sometimes your conflicts, your pain might last for years. I want to encourage you not to give up, to keep seeking, to keep praying, even if it seems like God is silent, because in the end, He's not. For those of you who have your Bibles, I want to go to a passage, a very beloved and well-known passage. It's in Matthew 5. Matthew 5, verse 3. We all know these as the Beatitudes. And these just spoke so strongly to me, especially this morning. When I was still struggling to grapple with, why the persecution, why the suffering of Christians present and past, and humanity in general. So let's go ahead and read this. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they revile and persecute you, and say all kinds of evil things against you falsely, for my name's sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. I believe this is the whole reason that Christ came. For those who are struggling, those who are broken, those who are persecuted, he promises us a place in God's kingdom. Are you dealing with something that is very real? Are you dealing with something, again, that you may not be able to talk to anyone about? Are you feeling broken? Do you feel like your life has fallen into pieces? If so, I would like to introduce a concept, another Japanese concept, another art form. Last year, we talked about Takahashi. You guys remember what that was? Hospitality, the art of selfless hospitality. Regardless of how another person were to treat you, you treat them with utmost love, and be selfless and as hospitable as you can. And I think it had a profound impact here at Hollywood Church. I heard the term thrown around a lot. People would joke about it. And they would talk about it. They would talk how they had either experienced it or they had practiced on Takahashi. Maybe not even getting the results or the reactions they wanted, but still, I think people persevered. I want to introduce you to what's called kintsugi. It's called the art, I title it The Art of Embracing Brokenness. And right here you can see this is a broken bowl. Maybe my life, maybe your life. Where you were useful, you were functioning once upon a time, and all of a sudden things got hard, and you fell to pieces. Like, you feel like you are not worth anything. You feel like your purpose is gone because you can't carry anything. What's the point of a bowl? And what kintsugi is the artist will take those broken pieces and use a mixture of glue and gold dust or gold powder. And he or she will bind the broken bowl together. So, just like this. So now you have, I would venture to say, a piece of art that is now useful again, that is, I would venture to say, more beautiful, more unique, original than the original container, the original bowl. And just giving you a couple other samples of kintsugi. Actually, you can find this on Amazon if you want to buy a kit. I think it's like $100 or so. You can take something, and if you have, you can either break it yourself or when it's already broken, and kind of paste it together. But maybe that's for another time. But in this art form, I believe that, we are the vessels. We are, the bowls in life. And sometimes we fall apart. We're dropped or thrown or something, or cracked. And we let God, as the master artist in our lives, pick up those pieces and piece them together. And what I think, is beautiful is that, he uses a medium, he uses gold to bind these together. And in our community, again, I see God as the master artist. And I see each one of us here as that golden glue that holds each of us together. So when things get difficult, when things get tough, God is the master artist to piece your life back together. But he needs this community. He needs you to help with that restoration process. And I have seen that here at Hollywood. Definitely as a church, we've gone through many things, but definitely as individuals, I've heard people's stories, I've seen people's tears. I've witnessed things that I haven't seen at any other church. But I also see resolution, and I see a community who might have been broken, pick themselves up and piece each other back together. It may be in the form of prayers, In the past, I may have heard frustration and venting and gossip. Now I hear words of encouragement. I see people advising each other. I see people praying for each other. Just within this past year, I feel that Christ is really revealing himself in our broken community. Not just our community, but everywhere else. I don't think there's a perfect community out there. But I think the beauty of it is we're piecing everything together. There was a lot I did not cover this movie. For those of you who saw it, I'm sorry, I probably didn't do the very, very emotionally topics some justice, but I would be happy to discuss those with you at a different time. There was just so much material. If anyone wants the book, I can get you a copy, like an electronic copy of it. So please let me know afterwards if you would like a copy of that. But let God pick up your broken pieces. Let him be the master artist. And let's use our community to restore each other to beautiful pieces of artwork that God intended us to be. Thank you.